So good afternoon, everybody, or good evening if you're in India. I'm Ethan Evans. I'll be chatting with you today about would Jeff approve your idea? And I saw him approve some, reject some, conditionally approve some. I'll give examples of each, as well as how you would present to an executive like that. So the point of this is to give you some insight into executive presence and how to stand up to a big leader like Jeff. I also worked for Andy Jassy, the current CEO of Amazon. I had a chance to meet Elon Musk when I interviewed for a job at his company, so I'll kind of blend some of that together. That said, let's jump right in because time is limited. So many of you know me, but if you don't, just 2 seconds on my background. I was educated as an engineer. These are all pictures of me over the years. Educated as an engineer, I spent 12 years working in startups, then 15 years at Amazon, where I was a senior manager, director, vice president. I was part of starting Prime Video, starting our video games effort, building the Amazon App Store, starting the gaming pillar of Prime, and now I coach, write, and teach, which is why I'm here today. If you haven't seen it, Jason will, I'm sure, put the link in chat, but we have a public GPT of me that's trained on 510,000 words of my writing and speaking. That's 5 years of stuff. And as you can see, it's extremely highly rated. It's also free, meaning I don't charge anything for it. OpenAI, ChatGPT, changes their rules from time to time. And sometimes there's free usage available on a limited basis in their free tier. Sometimes you have to have an OpenAI membership, but I don't get anything for it. It's just out there to help you, and it works. So we mention it. And here's the actual link, but I'm sure, yes, Jason put it in the chat window. You go sign up for my free newsletter, and you can get to the GPT from there. And I see some people saying they love it. So, all right, moving on to the actual point, which isn't bad. We're only 3 minutes in. How is communicating with the CEO of a major public company different? Well, there's a few things. A lot of people love this saying, I love anything short enough for you to remember. So this 6-word saying, be bright, be quick, be gone, is pretty powerful. The idea that if you can be smart about what you have to say and then be quick and to the point, so you have smart things to say, you get them out quickly, and then you don't drag out a meeting and waste their time, you will be most popular with your leaders in the long term. This applies with people like Jeff, but also with people like me when I'm in a VP role. It's explained here, of course, executives have limited time, they have a lot of stuff to do, and a lot of people trying to take up their time. Sometimes with good reasons, sometimes not. Be one of the ones with a good reason. So come with the outcome, come with a specific goal, make it easy for them to say yes. We'll talk about that in a minute. So pre-address their concerns and show that you understand the strategic context. So try to show that you understand the company's mission and what you're proposing is tied to the company's mission. Many of you probably came here because I made a post where I talked about how people were always pushing Jeff Bezos to enter the financial services segment. And that didn't really have anything to do with Amazon's mission to be Earth's most customer-centric store. People just thought it's a place with a lot of money, why not do that? So I've talked about Jeff borrowed these 3 questions, I believe, from a 2007 Harvard Business Review article. So one thing that's worth knowing is even Jeff and other leaders like him are still learning from others. So he was very willing to borrow these 3 questions from some researchers with Harvard Business Review. His 3 questions were, is it real? Is it worth it? Can we win? Taken from that article. And he used to specifically ask us these when evaluating ideas we were pitching him. So he would ask, is this real? Meaning, is it a time machine or can you really build it? Is it something you can really construct? How hard is it? How long will it take? All the questions about feasibility. because leaders care before they greenlight something or invest in it. They care that it's practical, that it's possible. Now, Jeff didn't care if it was hard, right? Blue Origin and building rockets, which is what he does today, is hard. Building the Kindle hardware was hard. Other things, building AWS was certainly very hard. But he wanted to know that it was still possible or practical. How do you differentiate hard from too hard or impossible? That's a good question. Impossible is when you need breakthroughs of science, breakthroughs of regulation, things that no one has any idea how to do. It's just a different category of hard. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Second question is it worth it? There's a lot of fun ideas that can't make money. Okay, they're charities, they're very small market segments is a good one. We had someone at Amazon once, an executive, by the way, someone higher up than me, going on at length about integrating certain software with people's full home sound systems, because this guy was wealthy and he had a full home sound system from Sonos where every room was wired with speakers and he could play music all over the house. And so he was thinking about his use case and what he wanted, but it's a very small market. Therefore, it wasn't worth it to go after it, because even if you get the whole market and charge a good amount of money, it doesn't matter to a company Amazon's size. So some of you here have MBAs, which is great. I don't, doesn't matter at this moment. Some of you don't have them. This is the business case piece. Can you show that the total addressable market and the potential average selling price and the unique selling proposition and all of that stuff line up to where if you invest in it and build it, you're going to make a lot of money? Because otherwise, it's not that the idea is bad, it's that companies only have so much time and resources, so they invest in the ones that are going to make the most money. Finally, the third question might be the most interesting. Can we win? And Jeff thought about this a lot, because even though Jeff's incredibly smart and Amazon had a lot of resources, it's not the best positioned for certain businesses. So going back to financial services as an example, Jeff took a look at that and said, look, he came from Wall Street, right? If you don't know Jeff's history, he was on Wall Street as a young man, working for a brokerage called D.E. Shaw. And so he understood the inside of the street very well. And when he left D.E. Shaw, he came here. People were always saying, well, why don't you do something in finance? You understand it. And he said, well, that market is very well served. It's got lots of banks and lots of fintech companies. Like, what makes Amazon unique there? And nothing about retail or AWS necessarily gave Amazon a unique advantage when it came to addressing financial services. He also disliked highly regulated spaces, right? Entrepreneurs like to break a lot of rules, but not so much break a lot of laws. And so financial services has a lot of laws and regulation that slows down certain types of innovation. Jeff preferred to operate in places where he didn't have to worry about regulation as much. It was just pure invention. So why do I share this story? I share it so that you understand that part of selling an idea to a particular inventor or funder or CEO is understanding their mindset and how they think. So you can think about your idea. I'm assuming most of you are here because you either have an idea you want to pitch, or you think you might have such an idea in the future. Or maybe you just enjoy knowing which ideas other people are going to go pitch might get approved. Well, you can think of them in terms of these three tests, because while Jeff borrowed these from Harvard Business Review and wrote them down here, or I wrote them down here for you, most CEOs are thinking about these issues. They may also be thinking about competition, pricing, some other stuff. So let me give you three examples, because examples are the most memorable. And I'm going to take you through three examples I'm familiar with personally. One of them got a yes, one of them got a maybe, one of them got a no. So it should give you the whole range. These are all things Jeff personally either approved or denied to me. So I know them firsthand. So the first story, we were building Amazon's App Store, which is on its Kindle devices. And we had, just to frame the story, we had built our first tablet very quickly and launched it only in the US, and it sold surprisingly well. And so come January, Jeff says, you know what, that works so well, we want to go global and be able to sell it all over the world by next fall, by next holiday season. I owned the team that had built the US store. Now, the thing to understand about Amazon, this is important context for you. Again, understanding how ideas get sold. Amazon has never been a global company outside of Amazon Web Services. Everything was done by country. So the US country stack, technology, sales, checkout, taxes was all separate from the United Kingdom, which was separate from France, which was separate from Germany, which is separate from Japan, which is separate from China, and so on. So being launched in one country did not mean it was an easy step to go be localized in all these languages with all the necessary tax and whatever. So we had to go global in all these other countries very quickly. Well, I didn't have enough resources to do that. There was no way. So I went to Jeff and I said, if you want this done, you have to steal engineers from a number of other teams and give them to my team, which in Amazon, and there may be some Amazon people here, was very, very taboo, particularly at that time. It was called poaching, and everyone was expected to hire their own team, not take from others. But here I was saying, well, if you want this, you're going to have to take people from others and give them to me. Now, if we go backwards a second, is it real? Well, Jeff believed the tablet sales business was real because it was selling well in the US. So he had direct data that we had unexpectedly high sales in the United States, and so it was real. Second question, is it worth it? Well, the way Jeff saw it, at that moment, our tablet was selling second in the world, or at least in the US. It was selling second only to the iPad. So he looked and said, we have a chance to make the world a two-tablet world. There'll be iPads and there'll be Kindles. So if we can do that, that's an incredible market position where we're the Android tablet and iPad is the iOS tablet, and that's the whole world. Huge leverage. It's worth it. Can we win? Well, we do have this. We have a global retail footprint, and we have a working device that sells well, so we think we can win. Therefore, he took engineers from all these other people and gave them to me. Now, moral of the story, and this is an important lesson, I hope, is he was wrong, or we were wrong, however you want to look at it. The project happened. He greenlit it for these reasons. But when it came down to this question, can we win? The answer was actually no. What Jeff didn't count on, or what didn't happen, is he hoped to scare everyone else in the Android space out of the tablet market by establishing a lead. What actually happened, as hopefully all of you know, is Google built tablets and Samsung built tablets and third parties built tablets, and now there's a billion. If you want an Android tablet, there's lots of choices. And so we didn't win in the sense of establishing a brand equivalent to iPad. So one important thing is, can we win is different than we will win. And just because your project is approved and has these advantages doesn't mean it will work out. But Jeff approved that one. So let's take example 2 real quick. Pinterest for travel. This was an idea that some people on my team came up with, and I was pretty excited about it. The basic idea was, if you're familiar with Pinterest, you know you can pin things and make a collection of things that interest you, and themed boards and collections of stuff on knitting or anything you want. Well, our idea was, when you're planning a trip, you want a place to stick, like, oh, we want to go to this restaurant and we want to go to this museum and we want to go to this park. And it was a way to like make a travel planning board. And then to make that a business, we would allow you to book those different things. So you'd be able to book those experiences and book your hotels and book your, so it was a place that let you plan the trip, and then we would monetize it by helping you book it. So is it real? Well, people travel, they want to travel, they plan travel. Pretty real. Is it worth it? Travel is a huge business. However, Jeff pointed out it's well served, and in parts, like airline tickets, it's very low margin. And so then his third question was, can we win? What he did with this project in the end was he said, look, Ethan, if you can find one of my SVPs who wants to sponsor this, I'm supportive, but I'm not going to tell them to. So how that ended up is there was an SVP who was willing to fund the project, but only if I would leave my current team to lead it personally. I didn't feel I could do that, so the project died. So it was provisionally approved, but it died. Now, fast forward to today, the strategy I've described is now being built and publicly is available basically through Airbnb. Airbnb has leaned into this idea that you can not only book a place to stay with Airbnb, but you can book guides and experiences and wine tastings. And so Airbnb is the closest to building what I envision. Finally, let's talk about where we got to know. So again, with Amazon's App Store, we built a virtual currency called Amazon Coins. Coins, you could use a collection of coins to buy apps and buy things in apps. So for games, you could buy things in with coins. And the specific trick is we weren't allowed, I won't go into all the reasons, but we weren't really allowed to discount an app or something in an app lower than the person who made the app wanted to sell it. So if you wanted extra lives in some video game and they said that's $2, we couldn't really lower things below $2. What we could do is we could sell you a collection of these coins as a bundle and say, buy $20 of coins, they're worth $20, but we'll sell them to you for $18, and then you can buy things with them effectively at a discount. So Amazon Coins, and it worked, was a way to discount prices because Amazon believes in low prices. Is a way to discount prices without the leader or without the approval, basically, or the buy-in of all the vendors. And it was a way for us to give up part of our margin to lower our effective price to be cheaper than the competition. So it was a competitive hedge. So the idea was we would grow our market share by being cheaper. So is it real? We know selling things at a discount, people like it. Is it worth it? Well, we were trying to grow a bigger market share. But these questions aren't the point yet. Where this got weird is when I was first asked to build this, I thought Jeff wanted it to apply to ebooks and Amazon videos from Prime Video and Amazon Music, all these other areas. And definitely he had talked about some of that. But when I went back and asked him for approval to expand the program from apps to all these other areas, he said no. And that surprised me because he had talked about it. So why did he say no? Well, discounting works, so it's real. It was the is it worth it? He felt ebooks were already selling just fine, and Amazon was very much a leader in that space. Amazon Video is very popular. Prime Video is very popular. So he didn't need to discount those things to win. Therefore, expanding our project was actually negative. It would be giving away money that we didn't need to give away. So I've tried to give you 3 examples of different ways he evaluated projects. We'll now go to Q&A. We don't have a lot of time for it, but I'll answer a couple questions. If you want to go much deeper into this, Jason and I have built a class. It starts in a few weeks on November 15th, so exactly 1 month, on how to stop being overlooked, how to build your executive presence and influence. And what makes this class most interesting, I think, is we're going to do a lot of live role-playing practice with volunteers from the audience. So it's not just going to be me talking to you about how to improve your executive presence. It's actually going to be you having a chance to do it, and to watch other people struggle through it and learn by example. So with that, I'm going to kill the screen share so I can look at all of you, and I'll take a couple questions out of the Zoom Q&A tool. By the way, there's 72 of you here, and if we go to Zoom Q&A, no question has more than 2 votes. So I'm going to wait just a second to see if someone actually wants to go vote of the 70 of you. Because if you go to the Q&A tool in Zoom at the bottom of your window under the 3 dots under Q&A, you get to control what I talk about, but only if some of you vote. And if the rest of you sit there and just listen, you get to listen to what other people want you to hear, which sounds a lot like having very little executive influence. So yes, I did kind of zing you there. All right. And what I see happening, I'll jump on this question in 1 second, is whoever put in the first question gets the most votes. Be sure to look down the list and see what it is you really want to know most. Because a question at the bottom has now climbed to the top, or a couple of them. Okay, so someone's asking me about Airbnb's market cap. Why was it only maybe when you pitched it? So first off, I want to be clear. What I was pitching was only a part of what Airbnb does, and it's a feature they've added recently. Airbnb already existed, and we were not proposing to duplicate Airbnb. We were proposing to duplicate the idea of letting people plan a whole trip with all the different experiences, guides, restaurant reservations, park visits, all the other stuff that you book around travel. And there are other websites that do that. So really, this question is a great question, but it's based on a misunderstanding that I was pitching that we do something like Airbnb. That's not what I was saying. Airbnb already existed, and we were pitching to do something that Airbnb is now adding as a feature. So I think, though, the main reason Jeff didn't fall over himself on this was the can we win, and can we get enough margin? How hard is this going to be? I often wonder if I had changed jobs and built it, but I didn't feel I had a good job at Amazon. I didn't want to abandon my team. So I'm going to move on then to Rajnish's question. Rajnish Singh, thank you for your question. How to deal with uncertainties in problem statements or business objectives, especially in KPI metric levers outside your direct control. Basically, I want to be executive in my responsibilities before I ask for that promotion. Well, that last part's really smart. You always try to do a role and demonstrate the skills before you get the role. So, how to deal with uncertainties in problem statements? Well, I guess the uncertainties, I'm wondering if by uncertainties you mean ambiguity, like nobody knows the answer, or dealing with risk, because those are different. You can, if there's a business objective, you can go ask people or look at the company's strategy or basically clarify, either based on looking at what the company's business is, does this apply to our business or is it completely different? So you can resolve part of that through strategy. Now, in the risk-taking part, there is no way to get risk to 0. And in fact, waiting for risk to be 0 won't work. You have to, because by the time the risk is 0 or near 0, other people have already seized the first mover advantage. So you have to go before them. And so you have to take risks, and you will fail sometimes. Example, Jeff wanted the Kindle to go worldwide. We got it worldwide, but it never paid off the way he wanted. So that's a risk that kind of failed. Even though the project I was supposed to execute worked, the outcome didn't. You also asked then, especially in KPI metric levers outside your direct control. So you're asking about a KPI, somebody else controls it, and there's uncertainty in something about that KPI and its business objective or problem statement. The question is a little tricky to follow, which, to the point, not to pick on you, if you want to ask really good questions and have high executive presence, you need to be somehow manage to be a lot more clear than this, because I'm pretty good at this and I can't really figure out what you're asking. So given this question, the real thing you're trying to get at is, how do you drive specifics in a business and nail things down? I think that's ask questions, right? Do as much reasoning as you can, do as much thinking as you can, which is you asking questions internally, and then you just go ask the other people. What does this mean? What is driving it? Why is it the priority? Is it defined right? You don't have to be hostile about it. You can be curious and supportive and say, look, I don't understand this KPI. How does it tie back to our business objective? I want to help you hit it. I want to hit it with you. I want to use it for my business, but I don't follow it, or it seems illogical in this way. Help me. And then you drag them through clarifying it. Why? Let's talk about how KPIs get made, and then we'll move on to the next question. KPIs get made by people who have a lot of pressure to write down some goal for a report that's due at a certain time. You'd like to think that every KPI is deeply analyzed, carefully chosen, and involves all this thoughtfulness. It doesn't. It's somebody like me who is under pressure to quickly figure out what they could write down for their end-year goals that somehow they already have the tooling to measure, that their boss would be satisfied with, that, by the way, they could also hit the goal. So remember, when I'm constructing a KPI, half of my thought is on what's this KPI about, and half of it is, am I going to be able to grand slam this so I look really good? And people who deny that are few and far between if they're being honest, because part of writing goals is writing goals you can hit while making, that you want them to look hard and actually be easy, right? And most of you would agree with that. You want the goals that you're being measured on to look hard and impressive, but something up your sleeve that you feel confident you can hit it, even if it takes some hard work. So you go ask about it. I'm going to move on so that I can answer one or two more questions. If you are familiar with rich versus king founders and CEOs, how would you approach a kind of CEO that's more of a king, i.e. needs to exert full control? It's their way or the highway. So this is basically ego-driven or fear-driven, or usually, honestly, a blend. The founder is the founder because they had the guts to go found a company and they believe it's theirs, and that makes them a king, but they're also terribly afraid of failing and letting go, which makes them a micromanager. Again, I was talking about Airbnb. Brian Chesky's the founder mode guy, and he talked about how as founder, he feels he has to have his fingers in everything. Well, that is this king mode. What you need to do then, again, and you may get sick of this answer, but I don't care, is ask questions. As opposed to telling them things, ask them things that reveal things to them. So ask them, what about doing this? Or would you, a great question, Jason really loves this framing when I use it, is under what circumstances? Under what circumstances would you build a new travel business? Under what circumstances would it make sense to you that we pivot and build whatever it is you want to build? But kings don't like to be told. That's your point. They like people who seem to be agreeing with them and saying, I love your idea, blah, blah, blah. I was wondering, can we also blah, 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 and that will make your great idea, O king, even better. And so it's less pitching and more laying things out on a platter in front of them and seeing if they'll grab it. And as a short answer, that's the best way I know of. The other way to do it is kings always have someone, an advisor, right? If you think about the king in the court, they always have a jester or somebody else they listen to. You try and get that person to help you pitch it. You try and Kings still have people they trust and listen to. You have to ally with one of those people to get them to listen. So that's my best quick advice on that. I'm going to do one more question. And so I'm going to take Larry's question here. And I'm doing that only because I want to stay on time and keep us short as promised. It's not because all of you don't have wonderful questions. How do you pencil out the business case quickly, especially if you're strapped for time? Okay, I might take two more questions because this one's short. I can tell you how I do it. This may not be your gift. I literally do it very quickly by thinking through in my mind, who are the possible buyers? What could this be sold for? How do I know some of that stuff? And then my level of modeling is usually something like potential market times what percentage of that market we might reasonably capture based on some comparison times price equals either big money or not big money. I have seen wonderfully elaborate spreadsheets trying to make market predictions, and I haven't ever seen evidence that they're terribly better. However, if you want another answer to this, you must have friends with MBAs. Go ask them. If you want the deeper answer, the question you just ask is an MBA question. It's what they do. It's the whole damn school. Sorry for anybody with an MBA. It's the main point, though, is you ought to be able to build a business case. Part of it, by the way, is also what can you be convincing about? I have a friend, he's done 3 startups. He's been a CEO 3 times. And his main thing is he says, look, people fund stories. They don't fund business plans. They don't even fund estimates. You need an estimate that allows you to tell a story that's believable and exciting. So, and that's the same thing, by the way, for the king's question. How can you say something that excites the king? Because people get swept up in, well, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then everything's going to be great. And you have to have enough facts that hangs together. But facts without the story aren't exciting. Story with no facts is just BS. You have to be somewhere in the middle where you have a set of facts, but also a compelling narrative about how what you're going to build is going to be easy to build. Even if it's very hard, it's possible. It's going to be easy to build. It's going to be very highly valued, et cetera, et cetera. You have to tell that story. So storytelling is a huge part. If you want help on that, there's a book called by a guy called Matthew Dix called Story Sell. All right, so Cassie, you get the bonus. There's a strong war around the Amazon memo. Would love to hear your take on the Amazon memo and if these questions were a part of it. They were not. The questions were not. So first, the Amazon memo you're referring to is something called a 6-pager. If you want to learn deeply how it worked, there's a book by my old manager, Bill Carr, called Working Backwards. Working Backwards will take you all through how 6-pagers worked, how to write one, why they were used, why Amazon adopted them, everything about it, if you care more deeply. There were some questions that we answered in the memos or in the 6-page documents. These 3 were not part of them directly, but I think they could have been. What was in the 6-page memo was more this business case that I think Larry was just asking about, where you would describe the customer experience. So that's the storytelling. We always began these with what's called a PR, so a press release, and that was describing the customer story. What's the customer going to get? And so that customer story was a way of beginning with storytelling. Then you would back it up with data. That's the business case we were just talking about. Is it plausible? And then at the end, you would get to the ask. What's it going to cost? So the cost was in there. The is it real is in there. And the is it worth it? They were all in there, but they were not specific sections. So I hope that helps. Everyone, I appreciate your time today. I hope if you think I've answered some of these questions well, or you'd like to hear more about developing your own personal executive presence, that you consider that class. And we have another free lightning lesson coming up in a few weeks. So if you want more before the class, you have that chance. So with that, I'm going to go. It's been fun. Thank you all. Book recommendations again, please. They're on my website under Ethan Evans, I think, /books or book lists. Jason can throw them in there. But Working Backwards by Bill Carr for the 6-pagers. And I know I mentioned another book. It's not coming to me at the moment.
Storytelling, Matthew
by
Dix.
Matthew Dix.
Sorry.
Yeah. Matthew Dix is also, if you like to learn visually, Matthew Dix has a bunch of his stuff on YouTube where you can watch him tell stories and then tell you how he does it. Because he is a really amazing storyteller. So, all right. Thanks everybody. Have a great day. Talk to you later.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.